Now, I wanted to do this in a separate section, so we're going to look at using the rest. Now, the reason I wanted to do this in a separate section is using the rest is a little bit different to when we've just got our normal stance and we can just get our hand on the table, and all the technique things we've just talked about, they become a little bit different when we use the rest. So the grip is different, the way we stand, the way we've got to line up the shot really, all becomes a little bit different, because when we're using the rest, the very nature of it is that we can't reach shots. We're sometimes standing in a bit of an awkward way, sometimes the table's in the way. So we're going to look at the best ways to use the rest here, which will hopefully give you the most reliability. So first of all, we need to look at our grip when we're using the rest. Now, I guess in some ways you've got two grips when you're using the rest. You've got what's happening for a right-handed player, what's happening with your left hand, what are you doing with this rest, and then you've also got how you're actually holding the cue. Now, I'm going to show you the grip that I always recommend players to use, and this is the way that the vast majority of professionals will grip the cue when using the rest. Now, some professionals do it slightly differently to this, but the majority do it in the way that I'm going to show in this video, and I think this is the most reliable way that gives the most control when we're using the rest. So first of all, let's look at our grip of the cue when we're using the rest. The way I like to explain this is, first of all, I'll get the rest out and place my cue on the rest head so that I've got my cue resting there. And then the way I'm trying to grip is I'll rest the cue in this fleshy part of my hand here. So you can see that I've got the weight of the cue, got a little bit of cue sticking out the back here, and I've got the weight of the cue just resting in this fleshy part of my hand here. And then what I'll do is wrap my thumb around and two fingers over the top of the cue, and then the thumb just touches the top of that first finger there. And then your other two fingers, so your third finger there and your little finger, go underneath the cue. Now, that grip gives you the most control, I think, for playing shots. It's a nice, loose, relaxed grip, but also you've got the weight of the cue in that fleshy part of the hand. You've got lots of nice control, and that's going to allow you to get through the ball nicely. So we've got our grip on the cue, and now we need to think about what's happening with this actual rest when we're playing shots then. Now, there's two ways of doing this. One is that you would get the rest out of your way like this, and then when you're playing shots, it just frees up some room around here so that you can sight the shot, you've got some extra room, and you feel like you can deliver the cue nicely. The other way to do it is to get the rest directly underneath the cue like that. So you can see I've got the rest coming towards me there, underneath the cue. And you almost hold the rest on the line of the shot so that you can use it as a bit of a guide so that you can see the cue moving backwards and forwards in a straight line. So some players do it like that. I actually don't really feel that it's necessary. I like to move it out the way so I've got some more room when I'm using the rest. But you will see some professionals get the cue underneath their body like that and use it as almost a guide for the cue moving backwards and forwards in a straight line. Now, in terms of what you're doing with the rest and how you grip it and how you can then control it, there's two ways of doing it again. One is to just literally rest your hand on the rest like that and pin it down so that it can't move. So I've got that nice and secure now so it can't move, it's pinned down to the table. The other way is to hold it underneath it like this. Some players prefer to get the hand underneath the rest and hold it like that. Again, you can do the same if you're doing it underneath yourself. You can put your hand down on the cue so you're holding it down nice and secure, or you can put your hand underneath it and then I'm holding the cue and it's just resting like that. Again, either one is absolutely fine. It just depends what you feel like suits your game. For me, I mostly pin the rest down. I feel like it can't move, and then I've got everything nice and stable, and I can deliver my cue in a straight line. Now, when we use the rest, the stance is different to the one that we talked about at the start of this video when we looked at our proper stance for getting down on shots and when we've got our hand on the table. When we're using the rest, it's a bit different to that. So I've put the camera in this position. This area's lit up quite well, so you can hopefully see how my stance is going to differ when I'm using the rest. Now, I've got this red in front of me here, so my line of aim is pointing somewhere along this here. So this is the line to pop this red. Now, as we talked about earlier, we would normally stand quite square to this shot, or even just a little bit side on like we looked at earlier in the video with our normal stance. Now, when we use the rest, it's a bit different to that really. I tend to stand quite side on, a little bit like if I was to throw a dart, so I'm standing side on. It's the same kind of idea when you're using the rest here. So when I'm using the rest, I'll try and look at the line of the shot to begin with. We'll look at this in more detail in a second, but I'll try and look at the line of the shot. And then when I walk in, you can see that now I'm pretty much standing completely facing away from the line of the shot. I'm almost completely side on. And then I get down on the shot, both legs are bent, but this allows me the best possible view of this shot, and it also allows me to get my shoulders a little bit more side on, again a bit like you're throwing a dart. If I was to just stand quite square to the shot, both my shoulders would be very square and I'll be using the rest like this, whereas if I stand a bit more side on, it allows me to just get my shoulders that little bit more side on to the shot so that I can deliver the cue more effectively. So if I line this one up, you can see I'm standing almost side on like that. That allows me the best view so I can deliver the rest nice and positively through the shot. Now, just to make a point here about the stance when you're using the rest, I've set up a different shot here and the white is further down the table and it's more difficult for me to reach this shot. So you can see if I do what we just talked about here and I try and stand side on, I can't even get the cue to reach the white. I can't get far enough up the table. So this time I would stand probably like this. So you can see now that I've completely changed my stance. I'm just leaning my body weight onto the table, which allows me to reach the shot a bit more. And I've got the same things where I get the rest out the way, my shoulders trying to be a little bit more side on. But you can see that by the fact that when we're using the rest, the table is often in the way. It's the very nature of these rest shots that we need the rest because we can't reach. And then it means that sometimes, obviously, the table's in the way. So we can't form an absolutely textbook stance with the rest. It's not the same as when we've got our hand on the table and we've got that normal solid technique that we can do and we can repeat on each shot. With the rest, we have to adapt when we can and try and get the fundamentals right, but the stance can adapt all the way around the table. So with this one, I would literally, like I just did there, just lean forward so I can reach much better to the white, and then again I can play the shot and hopefully pop the ball. So again, don't be fixated on trying to get this absolutely perfect stance with the rest. It's a bit dynamic, it's going to evolve around the table depending on what shots you've got and if the table's in the way. So just let yourself adapt to each shot. Now, as we've just looked at here, the table can get in the way, so we can't form an absolutely consistent stance. We've got something to think about in terms of going a bit more side on when we can. So you just have to adapt around the table and finding the line of the shot now. This is where it becomes a bit more important. So what I'm trying to do with the line of the shot is find the line of the shot. So I've tried to set you up behind the line of this shot with the camera. And what I'm trying to do when I play is I'm already trying to stand on this line and sight the line of aim before I do my walking and get down to the shot. Now this is more important so that you're not approaching with the rest and trying to find the line once you're down here. What I'm trying to do is find the line from back here and then slide everything forward and get into position so I'm not moving from side to side and moving on and off that line as I get down. So what I'm trying to do here is pick this line, I'm standing on it just like lining up the shot that we looked at earlier with our normal technique. I'm sighting this line and then I can walk into the shot, sliding everything forward, get everything in position. I'm playing this with topspin to get on the green, play it nice and positively, bounce on and off and come out for that green. So that's what you're trying to do with the line of aim. Even when you can't reach, you're trying to stand up behind that line, keep yourself focused on the line of aim, and then as you can see here, straight away the table is in my way a little bit for that shot. But what I do is I keep focused on that line, I'm adapting as I come round and walking round the side of the shot, keeping on that line, and then I can play the shot and you're sighting in a consistent way each time. Okay, so we now know how to grip with the rest, how to secure the rest on the table, the importance of sighting that line and keeping your eyes tracked on that line as you walk into the shot, adapting round the table and forming that bit of a side-on stance whenever you can. Now we're going to look at some of the little details about our bridge length and controlling the cue when we're playing with the rest. So when I've got this shot on the yellow, my bridge length really, I'm trying to mimic something like when I've got my hand on the table. So you can see this length that I've got here is a bit like my bridge length when I've got my hand on the table. It's about 11 to 12 inches, something like that. And that allows enough room when I need to do a full backswing when I need to get a little bit more power, and it allows me to go through the ball nicely. If you go too close to the white with the rest head, you can't pull the cue back enough to generate the power that you need. And especially when you're trying to use a little bit of spin, when you're trying to get some screw back on the white or trying to punch the white round a couple of cushions maybe, you need that bit of space there so that you've got enough room to pull the cue back. Now, the other thing you're always doing with the rest, this right arm, you want to get it parallel to the bed of the table if you can. So you don't want it down here like this. You want it up in the air like this so that it's nice and level with the bed of the table. So you want your elbow high, get your arm a little bit high like that. Now the other thing I've seen is very common here that you have to be aware of is giving yourself enough space between your face and where the cue is. So when people use the rest, I see it very common that they'll do this and they're lining up the shot, and you can see here that I just have not got much room between where the butt end of the cue is and my face. So what I'm trying to do is get further away from the cue. You can now see this distance is much greater here, and this allows me to do my feathers and then pull the cue back enough without the cue crashing into my face. When players go too close here, they're getting stuck here and they can't do a backswing as they deliver. So that's something very important. Give yourself enough space. Don't feel like you need to get incredibly close to the cue. You can sight the shot easily from here, looking along the line of the cue. So those are some very important things there. Get your bridge length good so that you can do that backswing when you need to. Get your elbow high and get some distance between the cue and your face. And one last thing to think about with that backswing is, although we're replicating our bridge length here and we've got enough room to bring the cue all the way back here, when you're using the rest, it's actually better to just reduce that backswing length a little bit and only come back about halfway, just so you've got a little bit of extra control with the rest. So even if I've got this shot here on the yellow that I just played, so I can replicate that bridge length, and then I want to do my feathers, and then I can bring the cue back, still gives me enough room to go right the way through and get onto that yellow. So just don't bring the cue back too far there. There's no need. When you're using the rest, you can shorten up just a little bit with your backswing. Just gives you that extra bit of control that you need. Now, a technical point about using the rest here is most rests have got a higher cross and a lower cross. So you can see I'm on the lower one here. It's a little bit flatter. If I turn it onto the side like that, this one's a bit higher. These feet on the rest here make the rest stick up a little bit higher. Now, for 90% of the shots I play using the rest, I'm actually using the lower one, and that's just because it allows me to keep the cue as flat as possible if I'm using that lower one. As I go higher, I've just got a little bit more elevation and I might be digging down on the cue. So, especially if I was playing a bit of screw back on the white, I don't want to be using this high one because it feels like to get to the bottom of the white that I'm having to really dig down. If I can get it a bit lower on that lower one, it means I'm not coming down at such a sharp angle on the white. When you use an extreme topspin, so the yellow shot that I've been playing in this video, that's a good example of where I would use the higher one because I'm playing right at the top of the white, and that then helps me play at the top of the white, keep the cue flat and get all that topspin that I want. So just remember to think about that. For lots of your shots, use the lower one. When you need that extreme topspin, you can use that higher cross. The last thing to consider with the rest is the fact that your arm wants to come round a little bit of a circle like that. So when you're using the rest, obviously, you've got your arm flat to the bed of the table like we just talked about. And then when you deliver, obviously your arm wants to come round in a circle. So if I was to just show that, your arm wants to go round in a circle, so the cue could come offline like that. There are a couple of ways we control that. One is letting the grip stay loose, so you're not gripping too tightly. The other one is you're extending your arm forward as well. So instead of just pivoting at the elbow, you're almost trying to extend your arm so you keep it straighter for longer. And remember, if it comes off the line very slightly when you're using the rest, long after you've hit the cue ball, that's nothing to worry about. I noticed that with lots of professional players, that you'll see the cue when they're using the rest, that at the end of the shot, it looks like it's pointing in a different direction to the line of aim. And that's just because after the white has been hit, the cue has come slightly offline, but doesn't impact the shot at all because that's long after the white ball has started moving. So those are a good couple of things to be aware of, trying to keep that cue in as straight a line as you possibly can. So that's how you do it, by thinking about, okay, I'm doing my feathers up, and then you try and bring it back and push it through in a straight line. As straight as you can get it there, and like I say, as long as you've already hit the white, you haven't got to worry about it coming round in a circle, but you try and keep it as straight as you possibly can by extending the arm forward as well. As always, if you did enjoy this video, please remember to give it a like. If you enjoy this content, please remember to subscribe to the channel. That really helps me to keep this content coming. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.